I want to teach you some incredibly useful and advanced words that you can use and that I think you should know for 2026. So I say that this vocabulary is very useful because I think these are words and phrases that are trending. They're becoming more popular. We're using them in more context. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the lesson. And if you are somebody who wants to build your vocabulary in 2026, please subscribe, turn on notifications. That way I can become your teacher. My name is Wes. The channel is Interactive English. It's all about helping you reach your fluency goals. And if you would like to get these lesson notes next to me, click on the link down below in the description. Join my email community. And if you are already a part of it, then check your inbox. I have sent them to you. So of course, this is a quiz lesson. I want you to participate. That's what it's all about. This is, after all, interactive English. So I'm giving you the sentence and the missing word, as well as the first letter, because this one's a little tricky. And I'm giving you the meaning down below. The manager gave the team some to adjust the timeline as long as the final deadline was met. So the word begins with the letter L. I don't know if you can see it too well, but I'll go ahead and tell you that. The meaning of this word, it refers to the amount of freedom that is available to move or even to act on something, like make a decision. So the manager gave the team some what? To adjust the timeline. They're going to make this decision on their own as long as the final deadline is met. And what is it that you are giving this team, or you would give someone some what? I think this is a great word, especially in a work context. And you're talking about that amount of freedom that you may have, or you could use it and say, well, you do not have much what? And in that case, you don't have a lot of freedom. So the word that we're talking about, I see it, great job, nice, Katarina, Julia, leeway. Leeway refers to the amount of freedom that is available to move or act, and you might give someone some leeway. Or somebody might say, I don't have much leeway. Now, I see somebody wrote wiggle room. They mean the same thing. So in this case, you could also use wiggle room in this context. They are synonyms. So that's actually also another great phrase. The manager gave the team some leeway, some amount of freedom to adjust the timeline as long as the final deadline was met. Just to give you a little more context, because I think this also helps you build your vocabulary, I want to share with you some collocations with this word. And often you might use it with a quantifier and talk about, somebody has a little leeway, or they have some leeway, or maybe you're asking for more leeway in order to do something, or maybe you say, look, I don't have much leeway. I don't have much freedom. Or the other end would be to say that you have a great deal of leeway and you have a great deal of freedom to do something, to act, to make your own decision, and you have a lot of leeway. So there are many quantifiers that you can use with this noun, and I wanted to share some of them with you. These are common collocations, words that are frequently used together. What do you think? Here is the next question that I have for you. Write your answers in the comments, in the chat. I just want to know that everybody's participating. The company's public statement felt what? Begins with the letter P. Rather than a genuine commitment to improvement. So we're talking about an adjective here. That's the part of speech. And the meaning of this word is done or expressed for the sake of appearance, especially to impress others or just to improve your own image. And I think this is a good context to think about this word. The company's public statement, it felt this rather than genuine. So, I'll talk a little bit about it when I tell you the word or show you the answer. What adjective, what word starts with a P, and you're basically saying it's not genuine. It's really, I was about to say it, not political, pretentious. Those are not the words. This is a word that, part of it is commonly used, especially as a verb. But this, again, we're using it as a descriptive adjective when you want to say it's not really genuine when talking about this performance, which is a noun that's very common, or to perform. But in this case, I'm going to take that word as part of the word family, use it as an adjective to say that something is performative. So the one thing I was going to say is that it does have more of a negative connotation because you're using it to say that, well, this other person or group of people, they're not sincere in what they're saying. It is actually a performance. And they just want to look good, or they don't mean what they say. And you could describe this action, speech, behavior as performative. It is done or expressed for the sake of appearance, and maybe to impress someone, or maybe you're doing it for your own image or your reputation, and you could say that it is performative. So the example sentence, just to read it one more time with that word, the company's public statement felt performative rather than a genuine commitment to improvement. And it's just something they do for the sake of their own appearance. And you want to use it in a negative way and say, yeah, that's really just performative. It's a show. That's all it really is. These people aren't sincere, or this person is not genuine. It's just performative. Here is the next one. This is a phrase that I like, and I feel like I've been using it more. Maybe I've been around other people who've been using this. So let's have a look. He failed to and made a joke that landed poorly during a tense meeting. I'm giving you the first word. There are actually 3 words that are missing. The first word begins with the letter R. So somebody is in a meeting, they make a joke, and it's like, okay, that landed poorly. Nobody was laughing. People maybe thought it was a little awkward. And they're surprised that this person would even attempt to make the joke. And you would say, why didn't you what? So the meaning is to understand or be sensitive to the mood or feelings of a group of people that one is addressing or engaging with. And in that case, when especially you're talking about a group of people and you're trying to gauge what's the feeling in this room? Are people happy? Are they angry? Are they sad? Or in this meeting, maybe they're discussing something that's very serious, and somebody comes in and makes a joke, and it's like, look, why would you make that joke? Can't you read the room and understand that it's inappropriate to make a joke? You got to read the room. So I saw some correct answers. And if you tell someone to read the room, you're telling them, look, understand the environment that you're in. And so that you don't say something that is insensitive or awkward or stupid or silly. He failed to read the room and made a joke that landed poorly during a tense meeting. And a lot of times you might say this to another person just as a standalone statement. If you're telling somebody does something and maybe it's awkward, and it's like, look, you read the room. All right, know where you're at. You got to read the room. So this is I think a useful phrase that I told you I feel like I'm starting to use it more. And you find yourself in these situations and you're telling someone, or maybe somebody might say it to me. If I make some offhand comment and they say, look, Wes, you got to read the room. Read the room. Here is a fun little comic just to follow up on this. They're out camping. I don't know why I thought this was funny. It seems just really a bit silly. And they say, wow, read the room, Ted. Ted's over here getting ready to tell a scary story, maybe a scary ghost story, without thinking that, hey, there's another ghost over there. You're going to hurt this ghost's feelings if you tell a story like this. And you got to understand that. You got to read the room. So really, this is about appealing to somebody's understanding that they need to be sensitive, they need to be aware of the comments that they're making, what they're saying, or the way they're behaving, that it could be offensive and it's just inappropriate, and you got to read the room. Great phrase to know. I don't have the mental to take on another project this quarter. I'm using it in a business context, and it refers to the energy or mental capacity required to deal with a situation. And it actually has two meanings. I feel like this is the meaning that is becoming more commonly used, and that's why I say these are words and phrases that are trending. Actually, maybe it's because I put this lesson together recently. I used this phrase yesterday when my wife wanted to talk to me about something that was more serious. I was a little stressed out. I had a lot of things to do. And look, I was like, I just don't have the mental to talk about this right now. We can come back to it later. So what word begins with a B, and it has that meaning down below? The energy or mental capacity required to deal with the situation. You could use this in a work setting. You could use this at home, like I just did and gave you an example. I can't deal with this right now. I don't have the mental what. So we're talking about the word bandwidth. When you hear this word, probably you're thinking, wait, bandwidth, like related to computers, but that is the other meaning, and I think the first one that a lot of people think about when talking about bandwidth. But we're going to use it to refer to the energy or mental capacity that you would need in order to deal with a situation, the mental bandwidth. That is a common collocation, and as you probably tell, as I mentioned the word collocation, you know that I'm getting ready to share some other common collocations with this noun, talking about the mental bandwidth, or somebody like, oh, I don't have the emotional bandwidth to wrap my head around this situation, or sufficient bandwidth, or I not have enough bandwidth to do something. I've been using it in the negative as I've been talking, like I don't have the mental bandwidth. You could follow this with the preposition to if you want to talk about the thing that you need to do. I don't have the mental bandwidth to have this conversation right now, or maybe you have the lack of bandwidth to do something. So keep in mind, you may follow these phrases with the preposition to, but I hope that you have the mental bandwidth to watch this lesson, participate in these lessons, and supercharge your vocabulary so that you can prepare for the next year. What do you think? The startup is already attracting significant investment from major tech firms. The word begins with an N. It's just a single word, and it is an adjective that means only recently formed, so really kind of new, recently formed or started, but likely to grow larger quickly. It's going to grow, or it's probably going to grow. So it's like we're referring to the initial stages of something, like in this case, the initial stages of a company, a startup, and the expectation that it's going to grow quickly. But when we're in that, just the beginning, it was recently formed or recently started, we can use this adjective that kind of just captures that idea. Please, if you have any guesses, again, I want you to participate. Write your answers in the comments, in the chat. Great to see so many members. Lolly, Manuel, Lolly, no. I think I was the one late today. I wrote the wrong time, and I apologize about that. Like I said yesterday, I just didn't have the mental bandwidth to deal with a lot of things going on. So the word that we're looking for, excellent, Julia, Manuel, nascent. Nascent is a word that you can use to talk about something that is recently formed or started, but the expectation is, it is going to grow and get bigger. So you may hear people use this in a business context, like a nascent startup or a nascent industry. People could use that to talk about AI, that it's still in the early stages and it's experiencing the nascent stages of growth in this case. So good word to know, one that I think as things change quickly, especially when it comes to technology, you're going to hear that word more and more, nascent. This is one that, I don't want to, again, I feel like sometimes I just talk and I give it away. Let me read the sentence to you. Social media often creates an where people only hear opinions they already agree with. I think this is true. And there are two words that are missing. So this is a phrase. The first word begins with the letter E. You can tell using that indefinite article "and" that the next word would begin with a vowel sound. So social media creates an what? And you're in this situation where you only hear the opinions that you already agree with. So we're referring to an environment in which a person encounters only beliefs or opinions that coincide with their own. What would you call that atmosphere? And I absolutely agree with this, that if you are on social media or use social media, which we all do, you're more likely to come across posts or content that is very similar to your own opinion that already exists. And it makes it more challenging to understand what's going on. And I feel like probably social media is not a good place to get news. You could find news using social media, but just be aware that when you are using social media, it does create this echo chamber. Yes, excellent, well done. And this is, I think, a phrase that you probably have heard of before. I don't know if you use it actively in conversation. I think that when talking about social media, you will absolutely hear and use this phrase. And because social media is becoming more and more a part of our daily lives, we have more conversations about it, and we will continue to do so next year. I think that it is a very relevant phrase when talking about this environment that we're in, and we only hear the opinions that we already have, and you have this echo chamber. Social media creates an echo chamber where people only hear opinions they already agree with. To give you a visual when it comes to an echo chamber, I came across this. I thought it's true. You see this person just stuck in this bubble of like, and you just get that exposure to those beliefs or opinions that you already have. And it basically confirms the thing that you believe, and people think it's true, and you're not getting other perspectives or outside opinions. And that is why you might say, and I think all of us are in an echo chamber when we use social media. So it's not necessarily something that's overly offensive, because I really just think it's a fact that we're on social media and we are in this echo chamber. Before making a decision, we need to issue from a practical standpoint. This is a phrase that you could play around with a little bit, and I'll talk about what I mean when I say that. But basically, the phrase means to analyze, explain, or break down a complex idea, statement, or issue into smaller, understandable parts. So if you approach me with a complex issue, I might just use this statement right here. Look, we need to this issue. I kind of gave away part of it just now. I didn't mean to, but it has two words. The first one begins with a U. What would you say? Put yourself in this situation, and there's just this problem that you need to analyze, or an issue, and you are actually saying this statement right here. You could say it out loud, and maybe you'll end up saying the answer. Before making a decision, we need to issue from a practical standpoint. And the word that I'm talking about, that I want, and it is a phrase, is to unpack this. The reason why I say you could play around with it, you might say unpack that, or there's a lot to unpack. But really, we're talking about the word unpack, and we're using it in the context to mean to analyze, explain, or break down a complex idea, issue, or statement. Before making a decision, we need to unpack this issue from a practical standpoint. So once again, you may say, somebody presents this problem, let's unpack this, or we need to unpack that, or there's a lot to unpack. To highlight that one more time, I feel like this context in which somebody's like maybe talking to a therapist. And in this case, of course, it's a joke. They say, let's unpack this fear of the mailman. and he's talking to his dog. And you would use like that statement, let's unpack this. Let's analyze the situation and see and understand what's going on. We need to unpack this. Here is the next question that I have. What word best completes this sentence? We need to explore all options before committing to a long-term strategy. It means capable of working successfully, and in this case we're talking about the different options, or feasible. Feasible is really a synonym for this word. It's one word, it begins with a V, and we're talking about what kind of options. Again, these are options that are capable of working, they're feasible, and in that case you could also say they are what? Give you 5 more seconds, and then I'll tell you the answer. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're talking about viable. Excellent. See some great answers. Viable options. If something is viable, then you're basically saying, well, yeah, I think that might work. We need to explore all viable options before committing to a long-term strategy. It's feasible. It's viable. Those are synonyms. I want to give you some collocations, even though there are many different words that you can use with viable. So you might talk about a viable plan, or a viable alternative, or, as in our example sentence, a viable option. If I want to use it with some adverbs, you may come across using it with saying something is perfectly viable, or economically viable, financially viable, or even politically viable. Those are some common phrases with this word that you may come across: movie, TV show, listening to a podcast, watching the news. But this is a useful word to know. So really try to think about it, the meaning, how it's used. Think about these collocations and just keep building your vocabulary. Let's, for a moment. What if the plan fails because we weren't given enough leeway to work independently? I'm trying to bring back up that word, leeway. The phrase that I'm referring to, there are 3 missing words. The phrase is to argue against a popular or accepted idea, not because you personally disagree with it, but just to stimulate debate. This is a word or a phrase that I've talked about in previous lessons. So if you've been a longtime follower of the channel, probably you've come across this before. It's something that I will do from time to time, and I may just want to debate someone, challenge their opinion, what they're saying. I may not necessarily, that may not be my real opinion, what it seems like I'm arguing for, but what am I doing in that situation? In this context right here, they're trying to make the best decision, and they want to know, okay, instead of assuming that the plan is going to work, let's what? And let's think about, okay, let's have a debate about, well, what if the plan fails because we weren't given enough leeway? What is going to happen then? But this situation, when you're going to argue against a popular or accepted idea, is to, great job, Takayo Bodhi, to play devil's advocate. I think we can all, I don't want to say relate to this, but I'm sure you can think of someone in your life who likes to play devil's advocate. They like to debate, challenge others, and it may not be their real opinion. Sometimes people just like to argue and debate, and they like to play devil's advocate. Let's play devil's advocate for a moment. What if the plan fails because we weren't given enough leeway to work independently? Again, I know I say this with all of these great phrases to know, and I would say if you want to try to put it in a little more context, make an association. Think of somebody that you know right now. Who do you think of when you hear this phrase, to play devil's advocate, and you know somebody who likes to debate, likes to argue? It's a great way to remember the phrase so that the next time you're in that situation talking about to somebody like, oh, they just like to play devil's advocate. Here is the next question. The film aims to traditional storytelling and create a more immersive experience. This is a verb that means to go further, rise above, be more important or better than something, especially a limit. This word I do think is more advanced. It's a more advanced verb that you're not going to just come across or use in everyday conversation, but I think it is a great verb to add emphasis and trying to show just how much further or how much more important something is, and you can use this verb to really add emphasis. It always happens like when I say this is an advanced word, it's not as commonly used, everybody just, they rock it in the comments. Great job, Wordsworther, Bodhi, Julia, Jing, great to see you, Zakaria, to transcend. And if you say that something is going to transcend something else, it just means, to go further, to rise above, to be more important. The film aims to transcend traditional storytelling and create a more immersive experience. So we're adding that emphasis. It's a very descriptive verb when you want to say that something is going to transcend something else. To give you a little more context, one thing that I like to do from time to time is share with you some news headlines so that you really get a better idea as to how it's used in context. So here's the first one. I'll just read through these. Joanna Macy, who found a way to transcend eco-anxiety, dies at age 96. It's a nice long life, but this person found a way to transcend eco-anxiety. I'm not really sure what that eco-anxiety refers to, but just an example with transcend, a recent one. Diverse Jazz Head program seeks to transcend all borders, and UK Jazz Showcase added to club rights. I feel like this is a collocation with this verb to transcend all borders, to transcend the limits. Here's another example with this verb, Theater Review, How to Transcend a Happy Marriage, presented by Iron Crow Theater at Baltimore Theater Project. And they're talking about transcending a happy marriage. And then the last article, Time to Transcend the How to Teach Battles. And we're using this verb, very descriptive, adding emphasis when you want to say something transcends something else. What? I didn't give you any letters for this one. It's a phrase. I'll go ahead and tell you it's a phrasal verb. I'll give you that hint. Let's for a moment and look at the long-term implications of this choice. And when you do this action, because it is a phrasal verb, you are stepping back from a problem or situation to see the patterns, the overall context, or unintended consequences. I've given you, you can see the picture. I thought maybe the picture might be a little bit of a hint when it comes to this phrasal verb, but for some reason, I feel like I use YouTube and I'll listen to different news reports, commentary, podcast, and this is one that I feel like I keep hearing more and more. And it's one of these things where I feel like other people are using it online or in the news, and then people hear it, and then they start using it, and it just gains a lot more steam. And that, therefore, I would say, this phrasal verb is trending. And somebody would say, let's for a moment. Even they might just say that standalone statement. Let's for a moment. And they're going to take a step back in order to, I don't want to, a meaning of it, like to see the big picture. But instead of saying to see the big picture, they're going to say this. Let's for a moment. And they're going to follow it and look at the long-term implications of this choice. I feel like it close, like let's take a step back. But I feel like in that case, it's not, when I think about stepping back or stepping forward, it's like progress. And you're like, look, let's take a step back and pause what we're doing. This is not necessarily about pausing something. It's more about kind of getting that overall view of what's happening. And I just mentioned that see the big picture. So yes, the phrasal verb that I'm looking for, Takaya, well done, zoom out. Let's zoom out for a moment. And you're taking a step back from a problem, And the idea when you zoom out is that you're then going to try to look at the big picture, see the overall context. Well, what are some of the unintended consequences of this plan or action? And you want to say, let's zoom out. So think about this phrasal verb having a very similar meaning to, okay, let's try to see the big picture. Let's take a look at the big picture. And you're wanting to see the entirety of a situation or issue or problem before you proceed. And in that case, instead of saying like, oh, the big picture, you could use this phrasal verb. Let's zoom out. Let's zoom out for a moment and really try to understand everything that's going on when we zoom out. And I don't know if that picture of that guy was trying to show it like he's like looking through some like camera angle, but you're going to zoom out. And of course, when people think about this phrasal verb, I think the first meaning that they go to would be actually using a camera. You zoom in, you zoom out, but it basically means what it says. When you zoom out, you can see more. You understand what's going on in the room or in that environment. The politician's vote for a policy he publicly opposed was a clear display of political what? There are two words. I'm giving you the first word of both of them. I thought maybe this phrase might be a little more challenging. But once again, when I say that, I feel like a lot of people know the answer. But if you know it, if you have a guess, write it in the chat, write it in the comments. But this phrase refers to a state of mental discomfort that occurs when a person holds beliefs or opinions that are inconsistent or that conflict with an aspect of their behavior. I think you would hear this when talking about politics, because politicians, they would vote one way, but it really is kind of the opposite of what they're something that they may have publicly supported, or in this example sentence, that they publicly opposed. So it was an example of what? You're holding these conflicting views, conflicting opinions, and you could capture that by referring to this phrase. And it is an example of what? First word begins with the letter C, the next word D. It is one that you're not going to hear it as often as I feel like maybe that phrasal verb, like to zoom out. But I do think it's becoming more and more popular. Very close answer. Not cognitive disassociation, very close. Cognitive what? That's the first word. Cognitive. I'll give you 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was a very quick 5 seconds. We're talking about cognitive dissonance. And this refers to that mental discomfort, that challenge, that struggle that somebody's going through because they have beliefs or opinions that are inconsistent. The politician's vote for a policy he publicly opposed was a clear display of political cognitive dissonance. I want to give you some more examples when it comes to this phrase, and these are more cartoons. This is actually, I feel like, a series of cartoons, jokes that is labeled as cognitive dissonance. I don't know if you can really see these, but I'll go ahead and read them to you. But think about, again, this idea of conflicting, opposing views or beliefs. And like somebody say, oh, I want to lose weight. My goal weight can be achieved through cake. These are two opposites. Or replying to work emails in 2 minutes or less, but replying to text messages in 2 years or less. And you have these replying to someone, this cognitive dissonance. Or telling people, I read a new book every week, but still binging Say Yes to the Dress. And then finally, refusing to spend an extra 10 cents for a paper bag at checkout because I'm cheap, but spending $16 on a salad that only has one tiny piece of half-baked chicken. And I feel like, yes, that kind of I also show that type of cognitive dissonance where I'm being very cheap on one hand, but then I'm spending money on something. It's like, wait, why did I spend so much money for this? It's clearly not worth it, but I do it anyway. And you have that cognitive dissonance. Here is the next one. I'm trying to give you another hint with the picture. I'll go ahead and put that out right up front. The departments worked in and rarely communicated, which slowed down the entire project. So you can use this word when referring to a system, process, department, etc., that operates in isolation from others, not sharing information or cooperation with other departments or groups. I'm giving you, as you can tell, just based on the meaning, that I'm going to use it in more of a work context, the same way that I have done in this example sentence right here. The departments worked in what? Now, the picture, you might be looking at and be like, wait, this is not an office. I don't see anybody working. But this is a word that has multiple meanings. This is the real actual meaning of this word. I feel like when I think of the word, this is the first thing I think of. In this picture, what are those? Do you know? In English, you would call these, this is a, or there are several, what? It is a place. The other meaning would be a place where you would store grain. So if you go to a farm or you're driving by a farm, you may see these things constructed right here that they're going to use in order to store grain or other things, and those are called what? Yes, excellent. We're not a solo. You're kind of close. A silo. Those are silos, but you can use it in this context to say that the department worked in silos and rarely communicated, which slowed down the entire project. And in that case, we're referring to a system, process, department that operates in isolation. So if you're talking about a farm, these are silos, and you're just going to use it to store grain or what have you. And you're going to store them in a silo. But in this context, we could use it to talk about work, and I feel like it's becoming more popular because there are situations in which this is happening. People, departments, they're not communicating, and everyone is siloed off from the other. Which brings me to the next thing I want to mention about this word is that you could use it in different parts of speech, like as a noun. The departments worked in silos and rarely communicated. If I want to use it as a verb, the company tried to silo its marketing data from sales, but it hurt the overall strategy. Or as an adjective, the marketing team became very siloed and lost touch with sales. So really think about the isolation, that word, when we're talking about a department, a team, whether they are trying to silo some information or they're working in silos. And whenever you hear this word, just kind of associate it with that isolation. Many people attempt to their productivity with supplements and digital tools. Once again, I feel like this is a word that you may come across. I feel like I hear it a lot, especially on YouTube, and it's becoming more and more mainstream. I feel like in some online dictionaries may not even include it, but it means it refers to attempts to improve the condition of your body and mind using either technology, drugs, or other chemical substances such as hormones. It begins with the letter B. And I feel like, again, boost would work. Boost would work. That is not the word that I'm talking about. But it does, if something boosts your productivity, it's a good thing. I feel like this word is becoming more commonly used because I feel like it's a good sales word. People would hear it and they think, oh, wow, like this is very important. I'm going to pay money. I'm going to try this. And I think in that case, it's very useful from a marketing standpoint. So when talking about improving your condition, could be supplements, it could be technology. The word that I'm referring to is a biohack. If you have somebody's trying to promote something, say, I have this great biohack for helping you build your vocabulary. You hear biohack, and that's a real captivating word. And like, ooh, well, tell me more. So that's why I said I feel like this word is more often used in this marketing context where somebody has a method or approach or a device or a supplement that they want to sell or they want others to use, and they're going to use this word biohack to say that it's going to improve your body or mind when you use this technology or drug. It's going to help you biohack your productivity or biohack your efficiency. Many people attempt to biohack their productivity with supplements or digital tools. And yes, I think that is true. So keep an eye out or listen for this word. I think you will come across it in this context, especially if somebody has this, I have this innovative new approach to help you biohack something. These are the words that we just went over, this advanced vocab for 2026 to help you gear up, get ready for the new year. And if you want to get these lesson notes, remember, check out that link down below in the description. You can join my community. But if you enjoyed this lesson and learned something new, please let me know by hitting that like button. That tells me that you're learning new things, you're building your vocabulary. It's an ongoing process. Remember, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. But I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I apologize for kind of messing up the time, and I'll just try to be more mindful of it. But yeah, I didn't have the emotional bandwidth yesterday to deal with some of these things, and yeah, that's why I made that mistake. But I'm going to try to get things in perspective. I feel like sometimes I just need to zoom out, try to get a better idea of the big picture so that I can move forward in a productive way, not really biohack my productivity, kind of like the way that I'm doing things. And I'm just using these words just before we wrap things up. So thank you, Lolly, Julia, Manuel, Takayo, Natalia, Bodhi. Great to see you guys. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you soon.